Okay, just been out here looking over this John Deere 185 for the spring here. I haven't had this one too long, but I did just put on a new ignition switch. I rebuilt the engine last year, and I also put on I'm going to put on a new throttle lever as soon as that arrives. Everything else is looking pretty good, although as I'm looking at it, that front left wheel is cocked pretty bad to the side. So I'm going to try to see if that's a bent spindle or what we got going on there that would make a wheel lean over to that level, to that extreme. That one doesn't look too bad, but this one is way off kilter. So let's see what's going on with that. Okay, so first let's look at the good wheel. We got about half a finger's of clearance in between it and the spindle. It's got a little play. I wouldn't say that's crazy excessive for a lawn tractor. But this one, by the way, I have it jacked up right now off the ground so we can see this. But this one is, let me put it on the tripod, it'll probably be easier to tell how we're doing. This one is moving excessively. So I'm going to pull the center cap over here, pull this wheel off and see what's going on. If the spindle's been eaten up, or if there's a bearing missing, or just really excessive play. Okay, I'm going to start by just working this cap off. Oh, that one actually come off easy. Oh yes, and this one has the famous John Deere retaining ring, not just the clip. So I'm going to have to go get some retaining ring pliers, or maybe I can get it off the old school way. Let me see if I can find my pliers. Okay, got the clip off. Let's see what kind of carnage awaits us. And that bearing has no internals to it. Now the next thing to see is how bad is this shaft. Oh look, the race is still on there. The bearing part that stays on there, that's still on there. That's actually a really good thing. Otherwise, the metal of the rim could have been scrubbing on the spindle, and we surely would have needed a new spindle. So it looks like it's just bearings here that we need. Let's just excavate some more and be sure. Here's all the original shim washers that would have been on there. Looks like those are all hogged out. Let's just see if we can get this. Yeah, that's the bearing race there. Good. Most of the time these spindles aren't hard to get out. Sometimes if somebody didn't, there is a grease zerk on John Deere's, thankfully. Sometimes they're very difficult to pound back out if water has been getting in there, or if they were never greased. This one has a little ridge there of some sort that it's hitting. I might have to do a little filing. Let me clean that up some more and see what that is. Can't quite see. Oh, right. Underneath. Yeah, there is some scoring. Let's see if I can get you under there. So here you're underneath now. Over here is where that would have been wearing. And yes, there is definitely some scoring. I was thinking it was going to be on the top, but right, that makes sense. It's on the bottom. We might be able to reuse this spindle because the bearing will be riding. Only the bearing race needs to ride where it rides. So as long as that doesn't have a big gouge where the bearing race goes on the new bearing, we should be okay. So let me just see if I can get this old bearing race off. If I can do that, that means the new one will go on, and then we'll have to see where it wants to sit once it goes on there. Yeah, it comes off. So you can see this is the balls would have been in there, and they are long gone. And these, I will take them all out. These are completely hogged out. I have no idea how they got that bad. And then we can clean this all up to see what that shaft really looks like, the spindle shaft. I'm calling it a spindle, axle, spindle, whatever it is. Oh, and it's whittled down on the end here too. The end bearing must be bad also. I just noticed this. Boy, is it difficult to do this in the camera. Down here you can see that's stepped pretty good. And under here too, this step here isn't good because that'll actually change the height of our wheel. Okay, so once I found that step that's been ground off the shaft there, I've just decided to change this spindle. It's really not a major operation, and these parts should be readily available, either new or used. So I'm just going to take it off and plan on changing it out. So I'm going to start by just taking the, I don't know if you call that a tie rod, it goes to the other side. Cross link, whatever. Turn the wheel a little so I can get at this one a little easier. Let's see what size nut that is. Big. Not that big. Can't be the same size as the other one. No. 5/8, both sides. Ooh, that's on there. See if we can get this nut to come loose. Boy, that's a weird nut. It's barely got any threads on it. It's one of those locking ones. Let me see if I can crack it loose up here. Get it moving. Get the whole thing moving through the hole. Now maybe it'll come off. Yeah, now it'll spin at least. There it goes. Look at that nut. It's got the nut part on only like half of it. It's a locking one, but it's kind of odd, even for a locking one. Okay, now I got to get this locking ring off the top, and that spindle will come out. And just to give you an idea of how sticky these get, I was just turning mine, and obviously this one hasn't been greased in quite a good long time. Alright, I got the clip off the top, and that should have just dropped right out of there. So you can see this is going to be a fight. I'm going to actually hit here and there because those pieces are getting replaced, rather than hitting here where I might mushroom it over and make it impossible to get through. Heavier hammer needed. If this doesn't work, which I suspect it won't, I'm going to heat it up. Heat up that grease inside that old spindle there, and maybe it'll just kind of mush out a lot easier. You can see I've barely made any headway here. I can turn it, I can do a lot of things, but it is just unbelievable tight. Which is probably why it wasn't steering the best. I'm going to just go for the heat now. I've just got a standard propane torch. And I'm just going to heat it up and down the shaft part, where the shaft is inside, and See if I can get that grease to kind of turn mushy again. Maybe that'll help me. Actually, I'm using MAP Pro. Propane, MAP, whatever you got. Just heat it up. It's turning a little easier. I'm just going to keep going with the heat to make sure the grease isn't the problem. It's a lot of metal to get heated up. Turn that off, see what this does. See if this gets, it turns a little easier. I'm getting a little bit of length down there. I'm gonna pry it while I'm turning. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's not good at all. There it comes. Wow. Yeah, that thing was seized in there real good. That thing hadn't been greased in quite some time. So I'm just going to plan on replacing this spindle. Like I say, let me try not to burn myself. Let me grab it with something here. So what the problem is, the reason I'm going to replace it is now I've got it turned upside down. You can see it's been riding here a little bit, but the real problem is here. That's down, I don't know, farther than the bearing would never sit round on it again. It would always be touching on the bottom and freewheeling on the top, so it's really not going to work. I'm sure if you were going to get a resized bearing and, you know, with a smaller inner diameter, somebody could turn this down, or, well, you can't really turn it down. You just throw it out and get a new one. Anyway, I'm going to pull the other wheel just to make sure it's just bearings over there too before I order a spindle for this side. Might need a spindle for both sides. So the other one has a little bit of play. The wheel's going to get all new bearings regardless, but I want to make sure the shaft is saved on the other side. Hopefully that one didn't go too far. I don't think it did. This one was the one with the most play, but I just have to verify. Okay, now I'm around the other side. And this one moves how it should, basically by itself. I'm basically just flipping that. That's how they should turn in there. But here's what's interesting. There's like drill marks on the top of that spindle. Like, what in the heck has somebody been doing to this tractor? Weird. Anyway, I'm going to pull this wheel and just make sure the bearings are good and the shaft hasn't been eaten away. Okay, the big reveal. Let's see if this one needs. Oh, good. The bearing's still in there. So let's see if it's any good. A little floppy, but it turns really nicely. This one, a little floppy, turns really nicely. We'll just replace them all. It does have the ball bearing types, and the good news is, now that one has just the slightest amount of wear there. So at one time, either this bearing or either the bearing that's in it now or the bearing that was in it did whittle it down a little bit, but that amount there I'm not going to worry about. The other side is definitely worth replacing. Plus the spindle was stuck, so it had to come out anyway. This spindle flips around like even with the rod attached, flips around just perfectly, even when it's in its up position. That's where it normally would ride. We'll of course grease all that before we put it back in. before we before we finish this job. But this stuff here is just going to get into trouble. Just dirt buildup. Could work its way in between there. We'll just get that out of the way. And then when the new grease comes, it'll flush all that right out. Okay, back here on the John Deere front spindle. Now, one thing I noticed on the drawing was there used to be, and still is, of course, buried underneath all the crust, a ring that would correspond with where the grease zerk would put the grease in, and that would get it cleaned up. No need to clean off the old one, but I'm just going to clean up the inside of the spindle a little bit to prepare it for when I get the new part, that it'll be clean and free of all that old grease and rust and whatever all was in there. Put down a couple of paper towels and my whatever's left of my tarp there. I'm just going to start with some degreaser to see if we can get it loosened up. Getting some stuff out of there. Try getting a paper towel to fit down in there, and then I could put some degreaser on that if I can get it to thread through. Make a rope out of it, maybe it'll go. I might run a file through that later. I've got to see how good it looks when we get it out of here. That's mostly just grease. It's not really rusting. But just to get the sides of it real flat, I might do that. Because the other one was incredibly tight in there. I mean, it couldn't even turn hardly. So yeah, I'm going to go get a file, just to give that a little bit of dressing up and down. Yeah, I'm just using a round file. My half round one wasn't quite the size to get in there proper, so just see if I can find any high spots on those walls and knock them down. Can I get under here? Not really. Guess I could jack it up higher, but nah. Then I'll just run some cleaner through it again. Just try to clean it the best I can, and then with the new grease, the new one should ride perfect. I'm going to call that good enough. Now I just need to order and wait for the part. For you it'll be seconds, for me it'll be days. So this should show you the damage on the spindle on the we're back on the left side again. This is why I'm going to replace the spindle. That metal's gotten whittled down there to the point where even if you put a new bearing, you've got that kind of play. It's not going to wear out the spindle anymore, but it's really been whittled down pretty bad. Unfortunately, from Deere, this new spindle's over $100 plus tax. So I'll be looking for a used set, guaranteed.